all by Zoom, and the meeting is being recorded. Okay, so first of all, we would like, as part of the business, we call the meeting to the order, and then we are going to ask Junie, are you there in the library or online?
I'm here. I'm here
Okay.
in the library.
Roll call, please.
Amy Bro. I've not seen her yet.
Oh, I'm here.
There she is.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. I do see you now. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Farhan Chowdhury. Let's see yet. Michael Eichholz, I saw.
I'm here,
Oh,
and if I'm gonna leave my microphone unmuted. But if you start getting driving noises or feedback or something, let me know and I'll mute it.
Okay. Scott Gilbert, I haven't seen yet.
So he's on.
Oh,
Hi, I'm here.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry, missing. I just need to stop looking. Michael Hyland, I have a question. I had written a note to add him for February's list. But I'm not sure why. Dr. Lee, do you remember why? Let's not be able to hear me.
Keep going. We'll get to number letter H,
Okay.
and we can talk to them directly.
Okay, Elaine Jakowski. Arash Kamahi. Yuting Lee,
Yes.
Sung-Hee Lee. Patrick McGrath
Here.
and Khaled Nexum
Next time you
is here. Bethany Raider
Here.
and Julie Tate is here.
Okay, thank you. So the next item on our agenda, we need to approve the minutes. Any question about the minutes?
Excuse me. I'd
So
like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
So who move it? Bethany, you move it. Anyone second?
I seconded.
Okay, thank you. So Patrick second, right?
Yes.
I believe.
Okay, we're going to vote for the approval of the minutes. So do we do it just by raise hands or just a roll call? Bethany, I think last time we agreed just to raise hands, right? In
We
a
can raise hands. Is that
physically.
okay with you? Yes, let's raise hands.
Okay.
Oh, it's gonna be hard for people like Mike.
Not on the, yeah. Mike did.
All in favor of approval of the minutes, raise your hand. I can't raise. I think the rest are yes. Is that right? Okay.
Okay, good.
You can lower your hands. Any objections? I'm assuming you're not objecting, Yuting. There you go. Any abstentions? All right, thank you. Motion passes. Oh, Yuting, you're on mute.
Okay, number 4 on the agenda, President report, and I'm going to report to the EC meeting briefly. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you had a wonderful winter holiday break. As you know, our December issue of Faculty Senator Updates and FIY newsletter went out to all faculty members before Christmas. In addition, I have about 4 items or business matters to report to you briefly. First of all, on December 17th, I attended the University graduation commencement as a Grand Marshal to represent the faculty senator and all the faculty members. I would like to express my appreciation to so many other faculty members who attended December's graduation ceremony. Second, on January 30th, that means about 2 weeks, 1 week ago, we had an EOC, Emergency Operating Syndex meeting or committee meeting. At the meeting, we talked about the exercise of actual exercise shooting in April. That means after spring break. Third, or number 3, at a meeting with the co-acting or co-interim provost, Mark Morris and Bob Morgan on February 2nd, that means last week on Thursday. We talked about the program reviews and faculty collaboration, faculty equity adjustment task force and their progress, and distant education money, and new operating tables, and also faculty hires, enrollment, and other business matters. Number 4, on February 3rd, we had a meeting with the Kiefer consultant and all the search committee members. We decided on those semi-finalists for Zoom interview this week. That means this Thursday and Friday. That's all my report. Thank you so much. Any question, comments for me? Any question, comments? Okay, if there is no question, no comments, we're going to move to the next item on the agenda. And we have a special guest, Dr. Anchina Turner here. So, Dr. Turner, so we have about 5 to 10 minutes discussion. Maybe you just give us an overview about your operating paper or constitution, and then we're going to have a discussion, and also we will have a motion to vote to acknowledgement or recognize this constitution.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me to be here. Okay, there we go. My video went out for a second. Yes, so, and just considering this, so we are hoping to get LGBTQ faculty and staff constituency, and we finished our bylaws, and we're hoping to gain support from other constituency groups about the bylaws. I'm not sure what questions you have. I know you have a copy of it. I don't know if everybody has seen that, but yeah, I mean, it was our strategy was pretty much to look at the bylaws that have been approved already for other constituency groups, and then use that as a template. And we made changes here and there in terms of, a membership fee and things like that, of $15 a year, with scholarships available. That is a little bit different from other constituency groups, but yeah, we definitely considered the bylaws that have been approved when we were working on this. Are there any questions? Or you are the first group that I've spoken to, so I'm not really sure what information you need or how this goes. But
Yeah.
One second.
May I ask you a question, Dr. Turner?
sure.
I know last semester we had a discussion on Asia faculty and staff council like this, the faculty senate meeting. And so my question is that maybe other faculty senator will ask you the question next week. My question, I just want to be able to try to ask the question before possibly other people will ask you. And we know for Asia faculty, Asia American faculty and staff council, we have had a group of planning committee, and we, in the cover letter, we shared with our faculty members and other constituencies. So, and the document, the only document we receive is the Constitution. So could you give us some background information? Perhaps that will help us to understand a little bit better.
I'm not sure I'm understanding. So are you, excuse me,
My question is that, is this the only the efforts of yourself, or it's a group of people putting together? That's a task force or planning committee? That's my question.
Yeah, you're asking about who put it together.
Right, and if so, for faculty member, or do you have any faculty senator or faculty member on your task force or planning committee?
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. So we did. The way that this came about was we established in 2022 that spring semester, we established an LGBTQ affinity group, and we have been meeting monthly and then got into discussions about constituency. And at the time, the people that were coming to that were full-time faculty and staff. The people that ended up, a lot of people talked about it, but the people that ended up at that weekly work group to put it together were made up. There was one I don't know if you need the breakdown, but I certainly give
no detail, just general information.
Yes. So there was full-time faculty there, full-time staff members, and an administrator was also there every week to put it together. And everyone had LGBTQ plus affinity.
How many faculty members? I'm just curious, just numbers.
That showed up on a regular basis?
Yeah.
Let's see.
Usually.
Trying to think. I'm thinking off the top of my head, there were two faculty members, full-time faculty members that.
Okay, good enough. Thank you. Any other questions for her?
Yeah, just how many for the entire group about?
That showed up every single time? 8.
No, just that we're involved in the discussion at all.
Oh, that would involve, gosh. So affinity meetings are they usually end up being about 14 people for some reason, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, but even last week it was 14 people. So the discussions took place over a number of months. Yeah. And that affinity group, sometimes people come in a certain month and sometimes people don't come in a certain month. So it wasn't the same 14 people having that discussion. I would say, I mean, so we have 24 currently on the listserv for the affinity group. So I would say people in and people out, not showing up every month, probably about 20 were involved in or present for those discussions.
Well, thank you for attending today. The bylaws of the Constitution came to the governance committee, of which I am a co-chair with also with Professor Maxim, and we had, I would say in general, there's absolutely no issue with the content of supporting your organization, and I think everybody is generally and very much in favor of the more affinity groups and support they have on this campus, the better the campus will be. We were uncertain as to what our role as the governance committee was in this process. And I think you might hear that next week, which doesn't really have anything to do with, doesn't reflect on the content of the organization or its importance or its significance, really has more to do with kind of internal questions relating to the faculty senate. When we also had the vote on the Asian constituency group organization, some senators wondered, what is the role of the faculty senate in recognizing that constituency group? Also, does the faculty senate, should the faculty senate have a role in that recognition? And part of that, I think, if to just paraphrase some of my colleagues, I think the concern is that we don't want any group not to have legitimacy because the faculty senate, because they haven't gone through the same process of being recognized by the faculty senate. So it's not, I think in general, it's not a question of conferring legitimacy. It's a question of worrying that we don't want other groups not to have that legitimacy because they haven't gone through a similar process. If I
Yes,
can
that's correct.
just, so that, just to give you a little bit of background of some of the things that I think you may hear next week and from some senators. And again, from my perspective as the co-chair of the governance committee, it doesn't have anything to do with the organization and what the organization represents. It has more to do with just the procedural protocol issues of the faculty senate.
Yeah. So, and thank you for noting your support. I appreciate that. So, I do want to say I'm not really clear either. So this isn't something I've done before, at any university. And, so I'm kind of feeling my way through this. And, I was told by a number of people, both in the work group, and then that was confirmed by Dr. Fraser, who is the vice chancellor of ADEI and the line that I work for, or that I'm under, that I would need to get support from the other constituency groups. And I myself I said, okay, I'll go through the process, but I myself was also not clear what kind of, what exactly am I asking? And I thought you all might know, because it seemed to me that, because it seemed to me that, like that was something that should be done, right? That people kept on telling me that we should definitely do that before it gets to Chancellor Lane's desk. And so I thought, well, yeah, you know where I'm going with this. I thought, well, everybody else seems to be telling me to get support from other constituencies. I hope the constituencies know what they're, I don't think it's editing support, right? I don't think it's, making sure the correct punctuation is there. But I get what your concern is too. You also don't want, and I did make an assumption that this is just what everybody did. So what I'm hearing is that's not really true.
Well, I think recently that has been the case, but historically, I'm not sure it has. And maybe what we need to do is request from the administration that they develop a formal process for doing this, so that we're not faced with this question every time a new group comes up.
Right. What if we don't support it? Then does that just, does everything fall apart for that group? Yeah. I did get a form, and I can certainly look it up. And there was one of the boxes to check was constituency support on the form. I can certainly find it and email it to you, or to whoever would like it.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Mr. Mike Bauman, he has a form before Chancellor signed. On that form, basically, there are different boxes, different constituencies. Yes, there is a protocol. Mike Bauman usually follow it. strictly. I would like to add 2 more comments to what our colleague said, especially the co-chair for governance committee. And when I received the document from you, Dr. Turner, then I forwarded to 2 committee co-chairs. One is governance committee, that means to Dr. Patrick McCross and Connie Maxim, as well as our faculty status welfare committee too. And that means Dr. Scott Gibbert, as well as Dr. Arish Kamoy. So, and finally, we thought this is a common, the common issue. Maybe we can put it as kind of special agenda rather than ask one committee to report. So obviously, at least in terms of the university strategic direction, we strongly advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So any other comments, question for her before we have a motion?
I have a quick comment. And that's just that this is interesting also, these sorts of lending support are interesting because they're not resolutions either, right? So this is sort of outside of the sort of, I don't want to say legal, but sort of the binding way that we sort of do things in the Senate as well. So it is unclear to me as well why these sorts of things come to the Senate specifically. And I fully believe that these constituency groups should operate not in the purview of the Senate whatsoever, that they have their own agendas and can operate with a lot of independency. Whereas if the more of us that get involved, then perhaps the more muddled things will be for those groups as well. So that is my concern.
Right. And my sense was, and like I said, this is my sense, right? I haven't done this before, was I was looking out for red flags from other constituency groups, not so much that anybody was, I don't know, put in charge or supervising or overseeing or however, the LGBTQ constituency, if we are to gang that, but really more people who are experienced looking over the documents and saying, hey, there's something in here that, this is not correct. This is illegal. This is against policy. That was more of my sense of why you were looking it over. But I am assuming that too.
Dr. Tony, if I can add something, Khalid Maxim. First of all, congratulations. So at least now you have a draft, you can work with it. For me, when I look at it, it seems like, SIU is set up more for, associations and things for students. So they're set up for it. But there is really no real structure, for faculty to build associations or to have something that represent their interests. Yes. And this would be actually an interesting case. So to see if the university is willing to modernize itself and to move a little bit to the year 2023, instead of living still in 1960 and something like that. And I would probably say, we have a vice chancellor for diversity, and this is a case of diversity and acceptance of all, constituents of our university, our modern university. And I believe that's where, you should be heading next.
Yeah, yes. Dr. Fraser has gotten a copy of it. The vice chancellor has gotten a copy of it already. Yeah. But you mean heading to him next for approval?
I would say so, because when we talk diversity, we talk, the different constituents of the university. And if we have a vice chancellor for diversity, I think that's one of the things that should be, his main concern is how we can actually get everybody within this university to work together and respect each other. And he should be maybe the one, pushing this to be recognized, not only at the level, we can take it as an example, not only here in Southern Illinois, but also in the state of Illinois, because we all know that the state has special rules now, And there is more and more recognition of every entity, you know, that represent diversity within the state, whether it's LGBT or whether, you know, minorities when it comes to religion or to colors. And I don't see, you know, why the Vice Chancellor for Diversity is not taking this as a case where, you know, he can recognize this and move forward with, you know, the other entities that we have within the university, like similarly with the Asians that we have to deal with. It seems like whenever they don't want to deal with something, they send it to the faculty senate. Hey, here guys, to deal with it. And that's wrong. This is wrong. I mean, we have structures within the university, and they should dedicate the time to basically, you know, recognize those structures. This is our strength. Whether it's the African community or the Asian community or LGBTs or Middle Eastern, those are entities that makes this university. And then since we have now Vice Chancellor for Diversity, I think that office should have rules. What should you do and provide, you know, to be recognized within the university?
Well,
Yeah,
that's one of the reasons I suggested maybe if we can have the administration formalize this approach, it would put that policy into place then to say, all right, we're going to formally recognize each of these constituency groups, and then even, you know, could lead that could lead to building a constituency cabinet or something like that that allows them a formal opportunity to, you know, present interest, you know, at that time.
Well, Mike, I think that our upper administrators, they need to probably make a difference between a working space where people, they have to be recognized and their personal beliefs. And I'm sorry to bring this here. So we need to be independent. This is a state-funded university, and we should behave within the state norms. So if there is someone who is a part of an association, you know, they have their bylaws, they have everything, and they come, we should look at it and then, you know, recognize them.
Yeah, I don't think I'm disagreeing. I'm just saying that I think maybe our approach to make sure that happens would be some type of request to the administration to formalize this.
The best approach is to say, do not dump things on the faculty senate that you guys can deal with. This is a more direct approach. Sorry to say that.
Okay, I know Josh, you have a hand, so we're kind of behind the schedule, Josh.
Okay, I'll make it quick. So since I'm the constituency's office manager, I deal with civil service and AP staff also. And when the Asian faculty constitution came, civil service and AP staff were also very similar to how you guys, they're like, why is this coming to us? And I've always been told, just kind of like how Dr. Town has, this is just the process. So I do believe that we do need to get clarification either from Matt Bauman's office or the chancellor's office on why.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the part of the danger again is that there may be groups that maybe one wouldn't feel comfortable coming to the faculty senate for recognition. There might be groups that are for whatever reason, they wouldn't be recognized by the faculty senate. I mean, I can think of some controversial political issues where somebody might not be recognized, and I just don't want the faculty senate to be a sort of a normalizing clearinghouse. You know,
It's called setting precedents.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
think so. And Dr. and just very sorry, Dr. Lee, just very quickly, I just want to say, Dr. Town, that please don't think of this as we're disagreeing with your organization at all, at least certainly from my perspective. It's, as I said, these are kind of internal faculty senate matters, and I certainly wish you very well, and I hope that you get the constituency status and et cetera. So please just, I want to clarify that.
Yeah, I'm not feeling that at all. Just to say, I actually was thinking that you're preaching to the choir, because this is a bit like stumbling around in the dark. I'm not really sure, but I'm just going to do what the next thing somebody tells me to do in order to gain constituency. And it sounds to me like I mean, at least I can say, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no huge red flags in the bylaws that we've written that, you know, But I absolutely agree with everything that you're saying, that it would be lovely, and being in my position as well, to have a step-by-step instruction for how this actually happens and why I'm doing the things that I'm doing, kind of thing. Yeah.
Well,
I don't
no.
hear, a lack of support at all.
I would like
So
to
Dr.
wrap up,
Lee,
I would like to
Dr.
wrap
Lee?
up the discussion.
Dr. Lee, I
Yeah.
think probably we should have a motion to
Yes,
forward the
yes,
case to
we-
the Vice Chancellor for diversity.
Okay, so we have a motion basically for the
So-
role of our faculty senate UC. We just want to vote to put it on agenda to recognize this constitution. So anyone move it?
Well, I don't, the recognition of the Constitution, I think that's sort of begging the question a bit. I mean, that's what we're unclear of. I think we need to say to the administration, you need to clarify this. We need clarification so that these groups aren't in any way discounted or not recognized. So I think if we proceed by just ratifying the Constitution, we're just doing the same thing that we've had questions about. We're increasing our own lack of clarity on this issue.
So I'll interject really quickly, because if our motion today is to forward it to the faculty senate, do we want this to be a larger
Right,
discussion?
that's, yes.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we just want our job to determine, they put it something on the agenda. Okay, we need a motion to vote to put it on the
Put it
agenda.
on the
But
agenda, yeah.
if you move it to the faculty senate, it means we will have to vote on it. If you
Yes.
move it to the chancellor, vice chancellor for diversity, it means that he has to deal with it, set up rules first, and then if he requires our vote, at that moment, he can send it to us for a vote.
Because are we going to be voting on if we ratify their constitution? Or are we going to be voting on whether or not we want to open the faculty senate to everything? Because like you said, there could be, it doesn't have to be a group about that diversity would be addressing. It could be a group of faculty who want to start a club for singles, like. And so, I mean, do you want everything like that coming to faculty senate?
And without a resolution, that's also very unclear as
That-
well.
That's why.
If
it's
there votes on it to the
Well-
bigger group and passes this one, then that opens it to anything that comes
Move
in.
it to the vice chancellor for diversity and ask if he send it back for rules.
My concern about that, though, is just that I don't want Dr. Town's group to become any criticism I don't want your group to be negatively affected if we in any way do something different than what we did with the Asian constituency group. And I know I'm
There is-
contradicting myself
There is a
here.
way you can say that we show support. However, we feel that we are not the right organization within SIU. So therefore, we are moving this to the Vice Chancellor for Administration.
Can we motion to table?
I think we
Well-
could say forward,
Yeah.
that we'd like to forward this to the faculty senate for general
Because of lack-
support of
Because
this.
of lack of directions or,
Right.
bylaws within the faculty senate on
But
this.
we need the administration is dropping the ball in not clarifying the
So-
process.
So we
Uh,
can motion to table and then
we-
bring it back to the admin and then bring it back up if we
I think
want
that's
to, or we
probably-
don't have
That's why
to.
we have a wide discussion if you want.
Yeah.
How to proceed.
We're much behind the schedule. We have about 10 items behind, so we do not want to stick to this. If we want to have a motion to put it on agenda to recognize this constitution, we need to have a motion to put it on agenda next week. Anyone to move it?
I'm gonna motion to table, which means that we can postpone it to a later date, or we can not revisit it at all if we don't want.
You have a motion to put it on the table,
Yes.
so that means next week we can.
Well, hold on.
Well, how about we table it until we get clarification from?
Yes, that was a thing.
So, Dr. Lee,
Okay,
the easy way is actually to keep it, live. This way, we have time to study it, is to basically put it on the table until, with the condition, until we have clarification from the Vice Chancellor for diversity on the role of the faculty association
Yeah,
in this matter, probably.
yes, and I would like to, I think we should talk about this, the lack of clarification.
Yes.
With the whole Senate, because there are several senators who I think would like to have their voices heard on this. Meaning they would also like to say, we need clarification,
Yeah.
because this just cannot go forward. So I'd like to put this issue on the agenda.
Okay, so can we motion, we might be able to then to motion to table at the Senate meeting
Or I'm
or
sorry,
something.
or just put this, the lack of constituency group. How constituency groups apply for recognition at this university.
Yeah.
That should be a general point of discussion
with-
at the faculty senate
Okay.
meeting. I
Not
would like to
specific
suggest.
to this.
Not- and we can-
this
we can
way,
certainly-
be just a broad.
Yes.
Do we want faculty constituency groups to come through the faculty senate? Because obviously civil service and they're not
So-
wanting to see.
That-
I'm still unclear about the motion, whether we're going to put it on the agenda next week or not.
Yeah, we can do it in new business, that's fine. I mean, whatever you.
I think you can keep it as new business until we find, what is really required from this, from the faculty senate in general. And that's where we need the upper administration to get back to us with, I would say with documents, instead of just, saying something that would say, hey, you guys, you can be involved in those things, or you cannot be involved in those things.
So I will motion to add
Okay,
this.
now, Josh, could you type the motion on the chat? Then we have some records, then you read it.
I motion to bring this matter to the faculty senate as new business at our next meeting.
Okay, anyone second? Okay, I heard you. So
Second.
can you second? Oh, okay. So basically moved to bring it to the faculty senate for discussion next week, right?
Yes, as new
Okay.
business.
And Connie, second, we're going to vote on this motion. So just raise your hands electronically or physically to save time.
As all in favor.
Okay,
Got your count?
Yeah.
Any objections? We're not looking for objection. Nays, yeah, and then finally any abstention.
okay.
Can I
Very
just
good.
add real quickly to our guest speaker? Don't let this stop your progress. You don't need our permission to keep moving forward with what you're doing right now.
I did have a question. Are one of you going to reach out to the vice chancellor? Are you asking me to reach out to the vice chancellor? Are you going to decide that next week?
I think maybe next week.
We'll do it.
We'll do it.
Oh,
We
okay.
want, I think we want to say you need to, this process needs to be
Yeah.
much clearer.
Yes.
So, and I don't want any, as we said, any negative effect on your group. So we will mention this to the chancellor and the provost and everybody, that this needs to be clear.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much, Dr. Turner. We need to move on.
All right, thank you. Thank
And
you
see
all.
you next week. Please invite Dr. Fresha to be there with you if possible.
Well, we'll invite him.
Yes.
Invite him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, the report, obviously executive committee's report, I did it. So no repetition, and the election committee, Bethany?
Yes, really quickly, we're gearing up for the end of year, beginning of new, getting new members for next year's Senate. We're getting that ball rolling. The one issue I have is Joe Shremick. He, as far as I understand, didn't actually officially resign from Senate. And he didn't appoint a proxy, so we're not going to, the election committee is not going to do anything about that, because since he didn't resign, it's not our place to get a replacement for him. That his seat, since his seat is going to be up at the end of this year anyways, we're just going to add his seat to the pool of seats that are coming up for election. So I will have more information on that as I get that ball rolling. That's it.
Okay, any more question for her? Any question for her?
Wait, so what's up?
Any questions?
Any questions for me? No questions, keep going.
Oh, okay, no question. Faculty Status Welfare Committee, I know that Scott was here. He has class as usual, so he left. And Arash is not here. Okay, so we will skip this. And we then have plenty of time for UEPC, and Dr. Amy Bro, so all floor will be yours.
All right, thank you, Dr. Lee. All right, can everyone hear me okay there?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. So we do have quite a few things on the agenda for today, and we are joined by a few chair or directors as well as an assessment coordinator. I'd like to start with the NUI and have that as a standalone. We have Nancy Martin here. So Dr. Martin, thank you. She can field any questions. I know you guys all have the packets as well as the resolution I wrote. But I did want to, before we jump into the NUI, just go over a couple things. One of our UEPC committee members brought up, and Dr. Martin was kind enough to give us a bit more information. So I wanted to share that before I opened it for discussion or concern, and then we'll move forward. So just quickly, we had how the growth over the next few years was calculated at the 10 to 15%. And Dr. Martin explained that that was looking at the BLS growth outlook for cybersecurity professionals, and that was actually 35%. So they thought their estimation was conservative with that 10 to 15% growth, and that it's a program that's fully prepared to implement without any additional faculty, and the large number of similar programs, SEMO or Springfield, is because of the high demand for this growing. So I just wanted to put some of that information out there so we didn't go over the same concerns multiple times. But other than that, this had full support of the Faculty Senate once we had that additional information. Or sorry, not Faculty Senate, UEPC committee, once we had that additional information. So it passed with 4 yays and 1 member did not get back to me. So I'd like to open this time up for any concerns or questions for the NUI for the BS in cybersecurity. As I mentioned, we have Nancy Martin here to field any of those questions for us. If there are no concerns or questions, I would like to move it for a vote to go to Faculty Senate.
Seconded.
Yeah.
All right, okay, so all in favor, raise your hand. All right, any objections? Abstentions? All right, motion passes.
All in favor, yeah. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Martin. Yeah, next one, Amy.
All right, thank you. Yes, and thank you, Dr. Martin, for joining us. It does look like we lost a few of our other guests, but I wanted to kind of go through the RMEs one by one and just ask for questions or concerns. And if there are none, then we can vote on them all collectively, since there are quite a few and to save time. But I don't want to not have a discussion if there needs to be one. So all of the following RMEs and the policy change had full support of the UEPC committee with 4 yay votes that all came in. I did have 1 member not reply. So of those that voted, we had complete support. And so I'm just going to go by each one to ask for questions or concerns. Please speak up if you have any concerns or questions, and if not, again, we can collectively vote for these as well. So first was the RME for digital narrative and gamification specialization within the BA in English. Next, we had the RME to eliminate the quality management specialization in the BS in industrial management and applied engineering. The RME for specialization in astrophysics. The RME for a concurrent BA and JD program, political science and school of law. And last, the approval of the major GPA 2.0 policy change.
Could I suggest that we take the last one, separately?
Absolutely, yes. Let's do the policy change as a separate discussion and move. If there are no questions to the RME or concerns, I would like to move. Oh, never mind.
I do have.
Sure.
Actually, no, never mind. It was in the documentation, so it's fine.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay. All right. Thank you. If there are no other concerns or questions, I'd like to move to a vote to approve all of the RME resolutions.
So anyone second?
I'll second.
Okay, so we're going to start a vote, Julie.
All those in favor?
Uh-oh.
I have a complicated, I'm in
Okay.
favor of all of them, but I'd like to abstain from the English since that is my home department.
You should be double voting that.
You can vote for that.
Yeah.
I just want to abstain from it.
Okay, so all those in favor? Okay, and any opposed? And any abstentions with the one noted already?
Okay, so all those six, I think approved, right? Amy, right?
So we have 4 RMEs that were approved and the NUIs approved, and then we're moving to discuss now the policy change.
Policy, okay, one more policy, okay, 2.0 policy.
So just to kind of bring this up, it looks like we don't have the associate provost on here, but it was noted that all currently as it stands, it reads that the requirement is a C average for all major work taken at the university. And we actually have revised this a couple times within the committee because we wanted it to be very clear that the major can have a additional requirement besides that 2.0 requirement. And so if you look to the new policy statement, it is now that each student must have a C grade point average or higher 2.0 on the 4.0 scale for all work taken at SIU, Carbondale, and must meet the minimum grade point average requirement for all major work in cases where the major specifies a minimum GPA. So we have certain requirements within the major, and we wanted that to be reflected as well. So are there any concerns or questions or discussions around the new policy statement? This one was also a unanimous approval from the UEPC committee once we sent it back for a couple additional revisions. So
I do have a question. Maybe UEPC talked about the question is that what's the implication on our recruitment, retention, graduation for this change?
So the change was, or the reason was because we weren't adhering to the policy. So it said that if you read kind of the problem statement up above with DegreeWorks and how they had it set up, the university wasn't adhering to the policy. And then DegreeWorks was implemented in 2016 and they had this degree clearance, but the registrar was not checking for anything other than the 2.0 on all coursework, not the individual major coursework. So we weren't adhering to the major requirements that were in place for certain majors. So that's the reasoning behind it.
Okay, I know we got the email during the break. This, I think, what I forward to you is this what we talk about, right?
What? Yes.
Okay, good.
Go ahead, Patrick.
So just to make sure I'm clear on it, so the idea is this is to fix the fact that under degree work, people had a 2.0 GPA, but if you looked at their specific major, it may have been below the 2.0 GPA and that wasn't being caught, correct?
So
Yeah.
they could have, yes, they could have had a 2.0, but maybe their major required like a 2.5, so it wasn't being caught.
Okay. Okay.
So just for like example, in the diagnostic medical sonography program, we require a C for some courses, but then we require a B for some courses. And it has to be the sonography specific courses for that. So that would have been a problem that wouldn't have been caught because they would just look at the 2.0 collectively for all work.
Got it. Yeah.
Is the, Amy, do you know if the, because I was looking at the Northern Illinois, their description, and they had, I believe it was a 2.5 for the teacher licensure program. Is that also, can that be applicable to us? And if so, do we wish to add language like that into our catalog?
So
It might also be a question for the APAA. I don't mean.
Yeah, I think it would probably be I think it would be covered in going to each specific major for those requirements. And they said, please check with your advisor about major requirements. So it could be encompassed with that would be my thought. But yeah, I think it would be a good question for the associate provost if we wanted to maybe also add that in the new policy. But that's a good observation for sure.
Okay, so we are going to have a motion. Amy, are you going to move it?
Sure, yes. If there's no further questions or discussions, I'd like to move it to the full faculty senate for discussion. And I will also ask Josh to be sure that the associate provost is invited as well and for that discussion.
Okay. Anyone second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Stephanie.
So we're
All
going to
those-
vote.
All those in favor? And all those opposed? And I don't, and anyone abstaining? That covered everybody. Okay, motion passed.
Right.
Okay, good. Thank you so much, Amy. And I think you've done excellent job in helping us all those IME and policy change. And now we're going to move to the budget committee, and we have Mike and Fan here.
As far on
Do you want to
present,
go? Yeah, I'm here. You want to go?
either way. Okay, I'll go ahead. So there's two issues we're still dealing with, of course. One of them is the salary compression. We met with Mark last week, I believe it was, or the week before, just to get a little bit more clarification on exactly what they were hoping to get to from that report. Our primary question was, did they want us to propose ways to adjust the salary? Mark's response to that was yes. And so right now we are working on drafting a number of approaches that the administration and faculty associations can discuss to help address the salary compression as it stands right now. We're a little bit behind schedule. That's primarily my fault because I got COVID a couple of times and I've had computer issues. So our committee is a little bit farther behind than what we hope to be at this point, but that is entirely my fault, not the rest of the committees. I just want to make that clear. Any questions about that?
I do. Does this include back or non-tenure track as well?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the other issue we are just beginning to deal with right now, and we hope to bring up with the chancellor today, is the distant education funding. I'm sure all of you guys have probably heard from various faculty and administrators in your program that the distance education that normally goes back to the schools and programs is not there. There's some discussion whether it was swept versus never was there in the first place. I think that's just semantics. And so we're really haven't heard much about that except that it's not there. And there have been a number of our constituents that have asked us to look into that, get a better understanding of what's going on. So we intend to bring that up today, and probably next week it'll be brought up again during the faculty senate meeting.
Well, Mike, if I may, I just want to add to something about what you said with regard to distant education money. I had a meeting with Mark Morris and Bob Morgan. Also, Chancellor Nan talked to me over the phone. Basically, for the distant education money, again, Chancellor Nan should be here very soon. We can ask him again. There was a discrepancy between the budget. In other words, in 2019, and the distant, because of a deficit, all the money wiped out. When Judy Marshall was when she was the CFO. So at that time, the provost didn't inform the campus community. So many chairs or directors still assume the money there, which is money not there. That's point one. And second, actually started 2022, 2023, the director, the deans know exactly the amount of distant education money they should actually have. So this is what I've learned. So again, Chancellor Nan, Mike Morris will be here. We can ask them again. Farhan, you want to add something?
Yeah, I guess like the question I have was like, they're basically saying it is the previous provost's fault and the Judy Marshall's fault, who was probably not here. So sorry, we cannot do much, right? So what can we do about this? Because people who have been relying on this is basically the money that should have been with the school or the program, right? So did the chancellor say anything that there might be some way to put those money back? Or we had some excess money from the state last year, I believe. Would that be a possibility and things like that, or no?
Well, a good question. Maybe you can ask him when he is here. Hopefully he will be here, or Mark Morris, because some faculty member told, as you have sent the email, which I forward to you, and they use the plan, the D money, which is not there. There was a negative impact on them. So we need to think about what to do.
So Dr. Lee, I think that the excuse that this was done by someone else than me, it's not acceptable. We work within institutions. SIU existed since 1867, and you and me will die, and SIU will exist. So there should be, an answer within an SIU institution that exists with different people.
Yes, I second that comment very much.
Well, and my concern is there are ways that money that are approved for that money to be used. And if we have no idea where that money is going and what it's being used for, how do we know that money is being used appropriately? And the people that gave us that money might want to know that as well. You know what I mean? So there are lots of concerns with this money that's just not there anymore, regardless of who made the mistake years ago.
Well, I can hear you. Yes, hear you. Sure. Well, if you have no more questions for Mike and Farhan, so we can move to the committee on committee. Yinan and Song Hee. Sung-hee?
Okay, yeah, hello, everybody. Committee has one agenda today. Doctors Eating Lee and Elaine Jarkowski have been elected by the Faculty Senate Ad Hoc Committee on Institutional Ranking and Educational Qualities to serve as co-chairs. And then Committee on Committees approved them as the co-chairs of the committee. So now I would like to move to motion to request Faculty Senate Executive Committee to approve Doctors Eating Lee and Elaine Jarkowski as the co-chairs of the Faculty Senate Ad Hoc Committee. Any second?
Seconded.
And let's vote.
All those in favor? Okay, any opposed? Okay, and any abstentions?
I'm abstaining.
Two abstentions, okay. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a quick question, and not about this motion. But so if Michael Highland's no longer the co-chair for that, correct? For that committee.
Could you speak up? I didn't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Michael Highland is no longer the co-chair of that committee, correct?
No, because he was the volunteer. Joe and Mike Hannon was a volunteer. There's no process, so therefore Joe is not there anymore. So I thought we should follow the operating people.
Sounds good. So,
Okay.
so you should not be
Okay.
okay. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Any question for Sung-hee committee on committee? If not, we're going to move to governance committee. Patrick and Khalid.
Yes, Dr. Maxim and I, we have nothing to discuss, so we're yielding our time. Thank you.
Any other comments? I know Mark Morris told me last week that there are a few new open paper and the new interim associate provost, Dr. Juliana Warner, is going to forward them to us. Just stay alert. Okay, pretty much obviously we talked about the ad hoc committee and new members and selection of new co-chair, so which was nothing to add. Any question before anything, any old business before we ask Johnson and Ann to join us? No old or new business. Okay. This is a good timing, 2:03, and we have Dr. Nan, Johnson Nan, you are here, and we had a discussion, and also Dr. Mark Morris, you are here too. We had a discussion about the decent education money, and we understand at least I had a meeting with both Dr. Morris and Dr. Morgan last Thursday, and also at Johnson Nan talked to me about decent education money. So the feedback I carry out, in fact, I share the information with them. The feedback from the faculty member is that they have already planned their non-actual money there. There's a negative impact on them, and they want to know what to do. That's one question. And second, okay, as a chancellor, as the the chief executive officer on campus, Johnson Nan, could you make maybe next week on Tuesday at the faculty senate meeting, you make open statement about what happened and what to do, then we can move forward.
There it is. If I can find the unmute button. How's everybody doing? Hopefully having a good day, good semester. I know it's already, believe it or not, next month is spring break. And I think for some, it can't get here fast enough. First of all, Dr. Lee, thanks for the topic. And I think it's important for us to, unfortunately, kind of walk down memory lane here for some of you that may not know some of the background. I had to learn about some of this when I came on board back in 2020. So this all goes back. Have any of you ever taken a look at the financial sustainability plan? It looks like only one of you. So that's probably a good place to start. In that document, I know Dr. Morris, feel free to share. That plan was developed back in 2017. And it was strategically developed right after the budget impasse of 2015. And if you remember in 2015, between 2015 and 2020, there was a loss of about 6,300 students. So from a tuition revenue standpoint, that is a pretty devastating loss on all fronts. DE money, regular students going to class here traditionally, everything across the university took a massive hit, everything. And it depleted the reserves to the tune of, we only had $15 million in reserves at that time. It depleted the reserves. So the rumor about, remember, oh, we borrow money from SIUE, that was just a rumor. We took it from our own. And the financial sustainability plan ran from 2017 to 2024. So that'll give you an idea. When that plan was developed in 2017, it was to run through 2024. And that was a promise to the board, and the board approved it. It was a promise to the board that we would have to pay back that amount that we basically borrowed from ourselves so that we could be whole. And we have been doing that every year, thankfully, right? Since 2017, every year we have paid back our amount. Our final year of doing that is next fiscal year, 2024. We have to pay back, right now it's estimated to be about $8 million to be able to finish that off. And at that point, it's actually 8.7 million. So at that point, we would actually be able to start rebuilding the reserve and doing some other creative things with that amount of money. And luckily, over the last few years, our state appropriations have been flat, not back to what they used to be years ago. We spent 130 million. We're now at 101. So that'll give you an idea about what we used to be. Dr. Lee, you were here around that time, and I'm sure many others were. We were at 130, now we're at 101. So how does what impact does that have on the DE money? So when I arrived, I noticed in most institutions that are struggling financially, they look to find any type of revenue that they can find to be able to put on top of their bottom line. And that was what was happening here. If you go back to our old CFO when Judy was here, at that time, the institution was running deficits because of enrollment and everything else. And so any revenue that was thought to be created, let's say from a DE bucket, was being used to patch a hole in the bucket, basically. And that carryover, if you go back even to 2020, 2021, 2022, the institution received out of the DE split. There was colleges got a certain percentage of dollars. To give you an idea of what the colleges get now, the colleges generate about 13 million. The provost, because there's a breakdown in percentage, the provost gets about 1.2 million. And then it's not me, it's not my office, but they use the portion that comes to me for scholarships, which is about $6.4 million. So if you looked at our fiscal year 2022 in our summary, our total revenue for DE was 21 million, right? It's $21 million. So each of the colleges, right, with the portion that they receive, and we'll talk about that in just a second, and what they've already spent so far from the revenue that was generated. We'll get into those numbers in just a second, but if you go back a couple of years, the question was, well, what happened to the carryover? You know, what happened to that amount? That 9 million or 8 million that we thought we generated, that went to patch the overall budget of the university's bottom line. That's the answer. So it went to patch that. So it's a tough shift when you're in a financial crisis. Sometimes you go, well, that's our money in the colleges. Well, from a CFO standpoint, it's the university's money. Because if that money doesn't patch the bottom line, then you get into things like a reduction in workforce, right? So you can't hire any more faculty or any more staff. You know, you have to start laying people off. So I understand what they were doing a couple of years ago to take whatever source of revenue they could find to patch some holes. So let me talk to you about how we go forward, because I think that's at this point probably the most important piece. So, and my thought is that whatever the colleges generate, and Mark and I have talked about this, and Bob as well, and whatever the colleges generate in real revenue, right, that percentage of revenue should go to them, right, not anybody else. So when they start the fiscal year in July, the dean should know exactly what they generated in revenue from the previous fiscal year. In this case, it'll be fiscal year 2023. And they will have their budget set, right, for 2024 based on the projected amount of revenue they expect to get. So if I'm Bob and I'm working as the Dean in Health and Human Sciences, and Bob says, well, I usually project this amount because historically it's what I brought in, but I like to add, which Bob wants to, I like to add to build more enrollment by adding 1 or 2 programs. Well, we want to encourage Bob to be an academic entrepreneurial leader, because that does translate into more revenue through tuition if he can bring in programs that attract more students. So it's a win-win, if you will. So Bob should get the money to be able to do those kinds of things and add to his amount that he would receive. And that's the amount we would give him. If you look at what we have spent to date on what the deans have, and I'll let Mark speak to some of this in just a moment. If you look at our fiscal year 2023, our colleges are generating 13.4 million. Provost, but that percentage this year is at 1.1 million. And the subtotal of that is 14.6 million. The campus portion is 6 million. That's for scholarships and those kinds of things. So that's $21 million. What's been expended so far, which means, to your point, Dr. Lee, deans are spending their money right now. And Mark can get into that in just a second, to the tune of $5.1 million. So there are some obligations from the beginning of the fiscal year in July, and these numbers are through December 31st, 2022. So they're about a month and a half or so off. But from July to December, all of these collective areas in our schools have already spent $5.4 million of their money. And Mark and Bob are working with the deans now. Mark's probably a good time for you to come in. Are working with the deans now about what they anticipate spending between January through July, right? So whatever one-time costs that they have, or whatever they need to meet, or whatever they want to add, they're giving that information now to Mark and Bob. So Mark, you want to take over from there?
Sure thing. So in collecting information from the deans with respect to their anticipated spending moving forward, and much of this is based off of commitments that they have made with this current fiscal year. There's what they have is roughly another about 5.3 million of commitments through the rest of this academic year. So totaling roughly 10.75 million for the whole fiscal year 23. And so what we're going to do is be sitting down with the deans and discussing how to best cover these commitments, prioritizing these commitments. We'll work towards in prioritizing them, satisfy as many of them as we can, that's reasonable, but also kind of put in a plan of how to, is this something that can be done in the next fiscal year, for example? Or is this more of a capital kind of project, equipment or something like that, where we may want to plan it out a little bit more and put in more of a 3-year outlook, for example, in planning these things through. So what we're going to be doing is assisting them in laying out plans to better plan from a budgetary perspective so that they can have some certainty and provide that certainty to their faculty and directors moving forward.
So that'll give you kind of a flavor of, again, going forward, if we were to spend the entire $21 million, if we were to spend all of that amount, our overall budget deficit at the end of the fiscal year would be roughly about $14 million. Okay, if we were to, and that, that's what we've got to balance, is how much of that, because we're still in the midst of one more year of a payback that we've got to do this last year. And the DE funds are not the only source that we go to. So I'll give you an example of pockets that have been tapped to be able to help about a $5.4 million payback every year. And again, we got one more year left on this. But we've tapped into other sources, whether it be parking revenue, whether it be lapsed salary from dollars that we just haven't spent because, we had searches, and while people were out of those positions, it created a pool of dollars to be able to go through. We're looking at a reduction in contract cost. So our contract costs are up about 22 million. We're looking at some contracts, quite frankly, that we don't need anymore. Things that just, aren't giving us any return on investment. In addition to that, obviously, we're looking at ways to increase our DE revenue. So just yesterday, we were meeting with academic partnerships. I've worked with them before at a couple of universities where I used to work for or used to work with, but academic partnerships really tries to help universities leverage their DE offerings and be competitive, much more competitive than we are at this point. So that's through our SIU Online and Extended Campus, them giving us some assistance there to try and increase. One of the percentages I thought was interesting yesterday, Mark, I know you caught it, 45% of the students in the state, who are in our state are actually receiving distance learning from universities outside of our state. So there's a real market that we can tap into on the non-traditional adult working student. And what we try to do is, I think Bob is out of the gate, probably doing it more than anyone, trying to be much more aggressive in the programs that we offer that can lead to more accessibility, obviously, for students, but then more revenue, more tuition revenue. And again, if they're generating that tuition revenue, we want to incentivize it by them keeping it and being able to, as Mark mentioned, allocate it as they see fit. Which would not come from me or the provost office at all about what they do with it. Quite frankly, it's not that we don't care. It's just that we don't have a reason to dig into that if they're making it and putting it towards things that they need within their division. So the long answer to that was that I think from a budgeting standpoint, it's like being in a boat and you're trying to fill some holes there. The hole that was filled was to try and lessen the blow on the budget deficit at the end of the year by taking that revenue and putting it there. Final thing, I'll say this, I've told Mark and Bob this, going forward, when we get through with the payback, we will log in right now what it is. I think folks are still going to be able to do typically, Mark, what they want to do within reason between now and July. Would you agree? I think we're going to be able to get there.
Yeah, I believe so. Mhm.
Yeah, so there's things that they want, they're going to be able to do that or purchase that. It's just inside of a plan now versus just all over the place. But what we will do is capture, so we don't forget about that carryover that was sort of invisible and went away. What we'll do is when we get whole again, we will basically pay those areas back, right? So think about it. If we don't have to pay that $5.4 or $8 million payment, if there was an area that suffered a loss of dollars they thought they had, when we're done with our payback and we get whole again, we will allocate one time, it's one-time allocation because it will speak to the year in which they made the revenue. But we'll go back and we'll fill that hole one time, but we'll go back and fill it so that way, yeah, they don't miss it. We don't just say it disappears. And I talked with Mark about that and with Bob, and we know what areas would need that, right? So that would be something that we would do. And if you want to get real specific into the areas in terms of what they are generating, I know, Mark, you probably have that data and can share it by school. So if you're just interested in, well, who's really generating DE money? We know what area is doing it, and some areas are thinking about doing it. They want to do more of it. They haven't quite got in there yet, but you'll be able to see who some of the leaders are that generate the most in what I would consider to be, Mark, significant funds in the DE space. So it is going to be more of your College of Health and Human Sciences, maybe engineering. There are going to be some other areas there, but Mark, I know you have the breakdown of some of those. I thought I may even have it right here. Let me see. I may even have it somewhere. Here it is. Yeah, so year to date, just to give you an idea, Health and Human Services comes in at about 2.4 million. When you look at revenue generated fiscal year 2023. In business and analytics, nope, sorry, revenue. Mark, I have liberal arts at 897. Does that sound right?
Yeah, COLA would be up there.
Yeah, COLA's at 897,000. They come in at number 2. Number 3 is business analytics. Number 4 is engineering. And number 5 is School of Education. 6 is arts and media. 7 is agriculture, life, physical sciences. And then it's a huge drop off after that. It goes into more double digits, more like 14,000, 2,000. It's a big drop off. So for the areas not mentioned, that's essentially they're not generating as much as some of the other ones. So that just gives you kind of a general idea on where we are with that. I don't know if that helped answer, or probably a longer answer than you needed, but definitely wanted to give you a little more information there.
So I did 2 things for I'm sorry, Dr. Lee. I did 2. One thing, I did drop the financial sustainability plan in the chat for you all. Feel free to peruse that. And then the other thing that's going to be helpful, just to piggyback a little bit briefly, I promise, off of what Chancellor Lane was saying, what we're going to be doing moving forward is, in my terms, get ahead of this from a budgetary planning standpoint, and looking at making any budget, putting out the budget for all colleges to know up front, and then whatever adjustments that might be made would be made at the beginning of the fiscal year, prior to that fiscal year beginning, so that those colleges can then plan out the rest of their year much better. So we'll be making that adjustment too.
Well, thank you so much, Chancellor Nan and Dr. Morris, for this clarification. I'm sure, next week, with what you said, you will say the same thing as you did. It will help to clarify some misunderstanding or some information. Perhaps Chancellor, you can give us an overview. I know the distance education took us almost 24 minutes, 20 minutes. So maybe before we ask you any question, maybe you can give us an overview about the campus.
Yep. Yeah, real quick. As you know, what's probably, something you're more interested in is a provost search. So Dr. Lee, thanks to you and the committee for working like crazy. I think we've identified a good number of candidates that's in there. Can't get too detailed on who they are because I know that information will come up. But candidates that are from institutions that we feel could really help us in where we want to go. And so hopefully this month we'll be able to not only identify sort of the finalists, but also identify the lone finalist of someone who we want to hire as our next provost. So hopefully you'll be just as involved in the feedback loops that we have before. So I encourage you to really give us some feedback. Last time it wasn't a lot of feedback in there. It was probably just enough, but probably could be a little more. But we welcome anyone to give us that feedback so that we can take that. I actually read it and actually give more stock in when I read it from faculty, since this is a provost search. No offense to staff, but I am looking for the faculty voice there. And from there, we'll make the hire and move forward. Legislative update. Things are moving like crazy. The governor will have his state of the address next week, should be next Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken. So if you get a chance to tune in, I just got off a call with one of the reps from the governor's office, Martin Torres. He tells me that without any promises, but he tells me that we are going to be very excited about what we're going to hear. Now, I hope that's the case, but I've heard that sometimes before and have been really excited. So I'll just kind of wait to see if that's going to be the case. What will excite me is obviously if we can go up more in our tuition. In our state appropriations. From a tuition standpoint, I know their message is hold the line on tuition. So I think you are going to probably hear that, how to make college more affordable, how to hold the line on tuition. Just so you know, that sounds great, but that's tough when you're doing that because our tuition has not changed in 5 years. If you think about it, our tuition has stayed the same for 5 years. The only thing that went up were fees, and that went up only by $3. So, we have been really good about holding the line on tuition and fee increases, making it affordable, adding all types of things like Saluki commitment, Saluki transfer commitment, Saluki step aheads, you name it. We've been trying to add to it. MAP grants, aim high money. So I think we've done our part. But when you look at our cost of deferred maintenance, when you look at our cost of utilities increasing, our need to hire more people, sometimes, you do have to move the needle up a little bit in either state appropes or in tuition revenue. So, that's something that I know will be talked about a lot. If you have state reps that you know of, please, 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 please talk to them about some of the needs that we have here at the institution that I just quickly rambled off. But I know that's going to be a big topic this year. So from an enrollment standpoint, we look really good with our fall numbers for applications and admits. We're going to do a really deep dive on yielding though this spring through the 10th class day. So you will probably hear about a change that I know Dr. Morris and Dr. Morgan and Mr. Williams are going to be talking about tomorrow to really make sure that we don't have any senior melt in our seniors that have been accepted. We want to make sure they go from the admission standpoint to registration. So as soon as March gets here to register students, we want to work on a plan with our folks internally to do a better job in getting them registered. And these are students that are right here, ready to go. We just have to be actively engaged with them. So feel pretty good about that. I don't know. I said if I had my way every year, we'd increase or at least give a cost of living increase or adjustment of about 2%. that's always contingent upon the enrollment. So we have a goal to be up about, I think it's 3 or 4% in enrollment, but we have to be up in enrollment overall for fall to really trigger some of those things. Obviously, we have commitments already tied in through one of the 21, 22 unions that we have, represented groups, where we've already negotiated. Mark knows all that. We've already negotiated some increases that will occur via the contract. But this is something that obviously those that are even non-represented, right, that we want to make sure that there's something there, but it's contingent upon enrollment. So we'll be talking this week at the board meeting about some of those costs that we think we'll have for this next fiscal year, but we won't be putting out anything concrete in terms of whether or not we're doing an increase in tuition or not. This is just a very early discussion, so that meeting won't cover any of that. That won't happen until later on this summer. So if you happen to be tuning in, don't be alarmed. That's not that meeting to put forward any increases or anything like that. So overall, as you know, we had a very unfortunate death over in the residential facilities. Peyton Schultz, just sad. He passed away, and parents are here. We are going to do something for him in terms of a scholarship, an student involvement scholarship. He was very active and involved in a lot of different organizations. So we will be doing some things there. And other than that, business as usual, just moving forward, moving fast. So Dr. Lee, that concludes my remarks, and be glad to take any questions.
Sure. Thank you. Any question for Chancellor Nan? Yeah.
Farhan has a question. Dr. Lee?
Yeah, Dr. Sung-Hee Lee.
Yeah. This is not just question. I want to just share one thing with you. Yesterday, I was told that the 5 Carbondale High School senior students received the full ride for 4-year scholarship to SIUC. So 2 received the Chancellor Scholarship, and another 3 got Saluki support scholarship. So this great news excited Carbondale High School junior student who became more interested in applying to SIU. I just was told my daughter, who is a junior at the CCHS. So I'm going to share with you. So they're very excited because last year, as long as you remember, last year I just know only one Carbondale High School got scholarship from the chancellor. So this year kind of more spread to local high schools. That's kind of great news. Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up. That's part of that commitment to really red carpet the region. And schools in our own backyard: Carbondale, Carterville, Murfreesboro, Marion, DeCoin, Cobden, you name it. We've had someone from each of those schools. We'll continue to do that. That's a big piece for us. So I'm so glad to hear that, and that your daughter should. That's inside scoop. So that's good stuff to hear, because we did hear after we gave out those awards, we had others already contacting us about coming here. So I do think that's going to help us in terms of keeping students here. It explains why we're up from students from the region that are selecting SIU now. We are up there, and I think it's just going to continue to get better. And we've got to dispel the myth that our kids are wanting to go outside into other places south of us when we can keep them right here at home. So we'll be pushing that one pretty heavy. So I'm glad to hear that. And Carbondale have the most too, by the way. They're the most folks that we've ever seen in terms of being interested in being here and participating in that scholarship.
Great. Thank you, Chancellor and Dr. Sung-Hee Lee. Any question from library room? Anyone? I cannot.
Yeah, they're in like the war room over there. They got.
Yeah, I cannot see that.
Dr. Lee, can I say something?
Yes, please. I cannot see you.
This is Farhan Chaudhry. So, Chancellor Lane, thank you for coming and giving us an update about what's happening regarding the DE money or about the university in general. But Sung-hee took away what I wanted to say. So that's the CCHS people getting, so that's a very good news. It's basically exciting all the students at CCHS. My daughter is a freshman and she can tell how people are very excited to hear that. So we should continue doing that. So that's number one. Number two is like what I heard was like the D money that was swept away, or so to speak, like readjusted, right? To patch the hole. So you are saying that one time that D money is going to go back to those accounts. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, let me be even more specific, because if I'm a dean, in order to incentivize this enrollment growth and to provide that particular program to the masses, and then knowing I'm going to get resources back to hire more faculty or hire faculty to start up another program, if I'm a dean, you almost have to do that, or else you're really penalizing them instead of incentivizing it. So, you know, we want them to competitively do more, and we want them to benefit from the revenue that comes with that. We do not want to take, you know, after this year, I'm dead serious. We don't want to take a dean's revenue to do anything to have to help the overall budget deficit of the university, right? We don't want that to be a portion of that, having to deal with that. So, you know, we will have an accounting of whatever it is people didn't get. And before we start to rebuild the reserve in year one, which would be fiscal year 2025, after we're done with fiscal year 2024's final deficit, believe it or not, after all these years, then we will make whole those areas first, because they are going to want to use it for whatever, and they should be allowed to. And then we'll begin to rebuild the reserve. Now, we do have to rebuild the reserve. I mean, I never worked at a place where we didn't have a reserve. You know, you have to have that, and we don't. And that's what we will create eventually. So yeah, to answer your question there, that's going to be an earmark. And Mark and Bob, I know just about how much folks thought they had or should have had, and we can make that whole again. But like Mark said, when they begin the fiscal year, our goal is for them to know exactly how much money they have to spend, no more, no less. And if they generate more over and above that, then we'll adjust it accordingly, right? So at the end of the fiscal, if we notice that, wow, Bob added 100 more master's students in this area, well, he needs to get his percentage of that too for the next fiscal year.
Thank you. Thank you, Kali.
I have one question here, if it's possible.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes. So, Chancellor Lane, thank you for the update. So staying within, you know, patching the hole, some of the money that we were told was used actually is the indirect cost. And we all know that only a small portion of the indirect costs go back to the college and to the schools. And that's actually, that money is very, very important, because it pays for a lot of things, you know, even for new faculty that we just hire, you know. So we're basically sending the message. We talk a lot about retention and faculty welfare and all these things, but in the same time here, we're sending a message, we don't care about you guys. So can you please elaborate about the rationale of, you know, taking that money away? Because we were even told that the deans could not even decide. It was money like, hey, we're taking this.
Yeah, we changed that. Matter of fact, thanks to Dr. Shaw, Tom Shaw, he and a committee actually recommended to me what we needed to do with our indirect cost. And I'll give you an example, and you're spot on. This is what we used to do with it. If you looked at our, well, you ask the committee, they can tell you, but, and Mark, help me out, because that document, I want to go back to what Dr. Shaw gave as his recommendation, because we accepted 100% of his recommendation. And here's what they said. We were spending the indirect cost on things that had absolutely nothing to do with research. I mean, we were spending, I don't know why, and I don't want to, I don't want to talk bad of anybody, but we were using it with things that had nothing to do with research. And there was also a percentage of an indirect cost that was received in the chancellor's office that I agreed to give away. I said, I don't need it. Give it to our vice chancellor research or to our faculty. And I think the recommendation, Mark, was that they give a certain percentage of mine to the library, and I think the Center for Teaching and Learning, or it was to go somewhere else. So when we pull this document, I'll let you see it, because it was 100%. Now it is 100% allocated back for research efforts, right? To incentivize the research. The selfish piece for me was, we've got to start somewhere if we're ever thinking about trying to move from an R2 to an R1, right? There's got to be some incentive that's provided for research, or at least a portion of that. So the way it is today, I don't get any of it. And, you know, we really pushed all of the revenue from that is right back into the academic arena. In terms of how that goes out. Mark, I don't know if you want to add anything. You were part of, I think, some of that committee, weren't you? You're on mute.
The question is about the money that was taken now. It was taken actually from the colleges, the indirect cost money that was taken now.
No, we have
indirect cost that was generated and was in the hand of the colleges, so it was taken away from them.
No, we haven't taken away any indirect cost money.
Yeah,
the only money that was taken, we haven't pulled any indirect cost money back to us.
That's what I heard.
At the College of Agriculture, Life and Physical Sciences, and I believe also at other colleges, so the faculty were told that you, the chancellor office, took that money away without even giving the deans the chance.
That's incorrect. Totally incorrect. No, I'm glad you're bringing this up. Chancellor didn't take anything. And I think what they're talking about in ag, they're talking about DE money. They're talking about the DE.
Both indirect costs and DE. We were told that all of that money is gone now.
No,
That's what we were told.
yeah, the indirect costs, Mark, I don't know if you want to chime in.
Yeah,
I don't have anything to do with the indirect cost money.
Yeah, that didn't, none of this involved any indirect cost funds. Those were grant-based funds, and that was not a part of the financial equation at all. This was solely just DE funds.
They probably misspoke.
May I interrupt really quickly, because I've been told that the indirect costs have been taken from us for the past, since 2017, as part of the fund to stop up the bucket, right? So
let me I'll give you a very clear answer, because what you're hearing is not it's just not accurate. So that way I'm so glad we have these meetings, because it could be a rumor. So the reality of it is, and the numbers and the books reflect it. To your point about indirect cost, the indirect cost, before I inserted the task force to look at indirect cost, those dollars from whenever 2017 on, those dollars were, to your point, they were being used for some of everything that had zero to do with research. So to that point, you are correct there. But that's why we put together the committee that was led by Dr. Shaw. I actually put that together because I didn't feel comfortable with us taking the indirect cost away, because I wanted to incentivize the research, not take away from it. So that committee came up with several recommendations. This was actually back in the fall, I think it was, Mark, or maybe last spring. We'll get you the document, but that committee came back very clearly, and they actually told us how they want that money spent. And that is exactly how, Mark, we better be spending that money, right? And so that all comes from that. It came from the recommendations of that committee in terms of how we would go forward in spending that. So we haven't pulled anything away or back or anything like that. The DE money, was to patch the hole, as I mentioned earlier.
Chancellor Lane, we have seen actually the document, the new one, and we were really very happy, because it makes sense now for people to spend time to write proposals and get money, because they could also see in the document, actually, you can get actually some salary from your own overhead. And when we heard the news about, that you're taking the overhead money, we're like, no, this cannot be. I mean, here is a mixed message, that's being sent.
So then.
Yeah,
That's why I decided to bring this on and have your voice, being heard by everybody.
you know what? If I had $1 for every time they said the chancellor said or did, I'd be rich.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it is so important that you're not afraid to ask the question to get the truth. And you can't hide this stuff, by the way. So this is all in accounting in terms of where things are allocated. There you go, Mark. This is the model that we all agreed to and blessed, and actually put it out in a campus-wide. I think we even put a campus-wide statement on it. But this kind of gives you a sense of where we landed in that committee. Mark, is this the actual recommendation piece?
This here is in the current allocation is what it was prior to the committee's recommendation. And then the proposed allocation is exactly what was adopted 100%. Except for the chancellor portion of 15%, which, as you stated, was reallocated in two other areas. So
IT and library, I think.
Yep.
So I didn't get real happy, even though they left me 15%. They really still took it away from me.
Yeah.
But I agreed to that. And I'll be honest with you, folks on my admin team didn't want me to agree to that, because they were using that 15% and a little bit more to do something totally unrelated to research. And I didn't think that was right. So, we gave that part up to incentivize, to your point, so we could show that is a commitment. It's one of our pillars, academic innovation and research. So that's why we wanted it to go there and went along with the recommendations.
Well, thank you so much, Chancellor, for your responses. I know that we only have about 10 minutes left. I would like to ask the Provost Office, give us some update about the enrollment information. Perhaps Dr. Morris, you have some data or information, or you will share with us. So if you do not have it available here, spring enrollment, and also the projection enrollment in the fall 2023. If you have some data, that's great.
So I'll share real quick again, Dr. Lee, what Wendell Williams provided to us. And here you can see, oh, hold on, you can't see anything yet. You can see it now, I would imagine. Where we landed for spring 23 was at 10,124, our census date count, down slightly at 1.34%, 1.31%, I'm sorry, 134 students. And this is also the breakdown from the various areas. As you can see in red, that's where there was a decrease, and green is showing the increases. So if you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer that. The other thing of note is the retention. And so much of what helps aid in our enrollment being constant and increasing is our retention rate. And as you could tell from this, our retention rate from spring to spring did increase in the amount of 1.11%. So it's definitely trending in the right direction. So as our classes of graduates continues to get smaller, we keep getting that good freshman class coming in, large class that we had this past fall, and keep doing these things that we're doing with respect to retention and improving that. We see great possibility of our enrollment continuing to grow. The projected enrollment for fall of 2023 is and I don't have that number
I
to
have
show
that.
you, but it's 11,266, I believe.
Yeah, and we're hoping, yeah, we're hoping that goes, we're hoping that goes up, I think 5%.
5% was the goal.
By fall. So that's our overall goal number, is going up 5% above fall 2022. So that's, yeah, that's the, I think it lands at like 11.6. We'll get the exact numbers, but it's a 5% increase above last fall.
11,660. That was,
Yeah, that sounds
like that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Morris. Thank you, Chancellor Nan. Any question for either Chancellor Nan or Dr. Morris?
And I have one thing to add too on the, if I could, at the.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think back to the war rooms. I forget who was saying this in there, but I want to make sure. One of the things that I think we can do a better job of, a lot of the folks, Mark, that we hired as deans who are here now were not here prior to, I think most got here in 2020, 2021. So a lot were not even here during a lot of the things that I just talked about. And I know one of the efforts that Mark and Bob have is to make sure that even our new deans, so that we have some accurate information out there, right? That they really have this information that we're combing through. And that is something I know that they're working to get them so that it's clear about where things have come from, right? And I think that is something that's on us that we could do a better job of as we communicate with our deans in those areas, so they know exactly what they have and where it's coming from, and when they can do things and when they maybe have to ease up on some things. So, you know, again, not for us to control what they're doing, but for them to have that financial information in front of them. In all full transparency, Mark and I and Susan, thanks to Dr. Lee and others who are inquiring, we have probably spent the last 3 weeks just combing through all of the data that's there. And just so you know, you may not think I live with some of this stuff, but you know, this is the kind of stuff that, I don't know if you can see that or not. Let's see here. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
So every number I gave you, just so you know, I'm not just throwing these numbers around. It's coming directly from here. Just so I just want to make sure you know we're not making this stuff up on the run. So every document you're looking at now, as I share, remember I talked about the expense analysis. You know, you get a good sense of kind of where we are. Again, this is probably more than you want to know, but I did want you to at least know there's a lot of information here that we could really make sure that folks in those academic areas that they have that information so they can communicate. So just wanted to add that.
Well, thank you so much, Chancellor Nan.
One thing before that we leave, please. We talked a lot about retention. And you know, the problem that we have today is actually, you know, a lot of staffs are leaving. I can tell you about our own problem within our own school. So we're told that a person who has been there for many years, so she was helping with contract with students and with everything. So she just moved to another school, and then we're left with nobody. Our students, they don't have even somebody to go to today, you know, if they are filling any paper or even returning their student work hours. So I would like to know if there is a mechanism by which, you know, I understand, you know, that people, they are free to move from one place to the other, but at least that, you know, the deans or the school directors, they can have a mechanism in place where they can put somebody very quickly to replace that person. And also the other thing is to communicate with the faculty ahead of time and to tell them, hey, we have noticed that this person is going to be leaving. We're going to put this person to support you guys. We are left with no support. I mean, this is really bad.
Yeah, there are a couple of thoughts, just if you don't mind, Dr. Lee, if I can answer that. This is, and Mark knows, I talked to him about it a lot. So first and foremost, if someone leaves from your area, you sound like it's a staff member that's leaving, but it could be a faculty as well. But if it's a staff member leaving, scheduled to resign or retire or go to another area, the line item should still stay with you, right? So that means you should be able to refill that position, do a search, and get someone in that position. Now, we all know that takes time. And what we've offered as a suggestion is, while that time is elapsing, you can do a couple of things. One, you can use the lapsed salary from that open position and actually pay for an extra help staff member to come in and help out, or give it as a stipend to an existing staff member until you get the full-time hire. That's allowable. You can do that. The deans in that area can do that. There's no rule against that. We actually encourage that, Mark, if I'm not mistaken, in areas. If you have the line item and you have a position that's open, you can get very creative and again, extended extra help someone to come in and help you, and use the lap salary, or use the lap salary to provide a stipend. So I know that if you have questions about that, have your dean get with Mark and he can share exactly what I'm saying. Now, other areas are doing that, by the way, so you can do that too. So I think that may help you as if you're trying to, make sure. You mentioned communication too. That, yeah, it sounds like internally that's just something that you guys would need to talk about. But that option of doing that to help you get through the hump is definitely a green option. You can use that.
Well, thank you so much, Chancellor Nan. Thank you, Senator Maxson, Candidate Maxson, for your questions. We only have about 3 or 4 minutes left. I appreciate your time, and I know next Tuesday we're going to have a full Senator meeting. It's a hybrid by Zoom and physically in the library. So I'm going to have a motion to anyone to have a motion to join the meeting. Okay, okay, you now move it, right? Anyone second?
Second.
Okay, so we're going to stop the meeting here. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful afternoon and see you next week.
Thank you, guys. See you.